This is the story of how I created Apocalypse. It's also a story about survival, not just for the main character, but also for me. And it's one I almost didn't win. In 2012, I was signed off from work with a collapsing spine. I was in constant pain and I could barely walk. I couldn't work anymore. And at the same time, my best friend and flatmate killed himself. I was the one to find him in the bathtub, and I was the one, for financial reasons, who had to stay in that flat and live with the memories of everything that had happened. Depression took hold. The curtains stayed closed every single day. They didn't open for 2 years. And yet, in 2014, I knew I had to pull myself out of this dark slump, and I came up with the idea of creating a sci-fi series for YouTube. I would release an episode every single day throughout September. And this is how I went about creating Apocalypse. This is Refracted World. Earlier this year, I released a podcast entitled Surviving Suicide. It was the first time I ever opened up about the entire story of what happened with Jason and the aftermath of dealing with that. But I don't want to talk about it again. If you want, I'll link it into this video, but as therapeutic as it was also incredibly painful to talk about, and I feel like I don't need to do it again. So, this video will just concentrate on how I created Apocalypse through my depression. Depression's something I've always had to deal with. Sometimes it's become so overwhelming I can't cope, and others it's manageable, but it's always there. I know it's always there, and so I just have to deal with that. But I can make some light out of the dark, and that's what I tried to do with Apocalypse. Being out of work meant I had no money, but I could still write. I realised early on that I wanted to make a sci-fi series for YouTube and release an episode every single day in September, because that would mean I was busy the entire month and the preceding months as well. I'd have to write it and film it and market it, and so I felt this was a brilliant way to pull myself out of the darkness. But that didn't mean I was going to skimp on the story. It's an epic, post-apocalyptic tale involving first contact with an alien race, humans spreading out amongst the stars, and a massive religious war that tears Earth apart, bringing about the near extinction of our species. Unfortunately, I couldn't show any of that. I was doing this alone, and I barely had enough money to eat. Therefore, the only way I could tell this story was through one person's perspective. I also didn't have much in the way of technical equipment, an old camcorder, a green screen, and the terrible decision to use duct tape as part of a costume. Luckily, I had a friend who was a makeup artist, and he offered to do the makeup for half a day's filming. Another friend was a graphic designer, and he was able to help to add visuals to my green screen. I wrote the whole story out and then split it into 30 parts, one for each day of September. I filmed it in August in one day, but I couldn't film it in order. I had to film it backwards. This was because I wanted to show the passage of time through my beard length, and it would obviously grow over a period of a month. So, I start with a full beard on the final episode, and as it goes backwards, I would trim more and more off. Sebastian is the main character, and he comes from wealth, and I wanted to show the audience that in the first episode. I did debate whether to have him covered in dirt as if fighting his way through the ongoing war, but I didn't feel that was right for the character. He was rich and lived in a mansion, so he wouldn't have been dirty. Therefore, I presented him with a tidy beard, black shirt, and most importantly, clean. He had moved down to a high-tech bunker underneath his house. His father had had this built using the very best technology and equipment. This bunker would have cost millions. There was no way Sebastian would have been unkempt and dirty, at least in the beginning. Another decision I made was to not have a fuzzy effect on the camera. We see this all the time in science fiction, but it wouldn't make sense in this instance. This is Earth's future, and as we don't have fuzz on our screens now, we certainly wouldn't in 20 plus years' time. The story is being told through Sebastian's video diary entries. He's recording them for human colonies on other planets, so he needs to be concise in everything he says and does. He feels he could be the only one left on Earth to do this. Therefore, the story unfolds over each episode. Eventually, we learn everything that's happened in the world and why it's fallen into chaos. Like everything I write, there is a clear message in Apocalypse, and this time, it's that humans are not ready for first contact with any alien race. We can barely get along with other countries, especially those who don't speak the same language. Before the first episode was released, I put out a teaser trailer and then a full trailer. I also did a lot of marketing. An online magazine did a huge interview with me to promote the series, and I used screen grabs from the first few episodes to sit alongside it on the article. There was a real buzz around episode 1, and when it was released, it gained thousands of views in the first few hours. Around halfway through the month, a former Doctor Who writer saw the show and commented that he loved it and that it reminded him of Doctor Who in the 70s when he was a writer. The excitement, the buzz, and the viewing figures dwindled quite quickly. It's difficult enough to get people to watch one of your videos, let alone one every day for a month. And so the viewers went from thousands to hundreds to tens. And I consoled myself thinking that people are probably waiting until they're all out and then they can watch the whole thing. So, to capitalise on that theory, on the 1st of October, once all 30 episodes had been released, I'd collated them all together and put them out as Season 1. Well, unfortunately, the people who had already seen it didn't want to watch it again, and anyone new to the series would see this one video that's over an hour long and think, I'm not watching that. And so it sat there, unwatched, for days. This crushed me. I had put a lot of time, energy, and hope into Apocalypse. I'd done everything I could to make it as good as possible, and I really thought people would love it. But when the viewing figures fell, I felt like a failure. From that point on, the darkness took over. A few days later, it was the 2-year anniversary of Jason's death, and when talking to people about it, I felt like they didn't want to hear it anymore. No one wanted to hear me talk about Jason or complain about my pain or my money worries or how depressed I was. I'd said it all so many times, I was sick of hearing it myself. And so I stopped talking. To anyone. I didn't leave the flat, I didn't speak to anyone on the phone, and I didn't see another human being for 2 weeks. I had 2 cats at the time, mine and Jason's, and they needed food. So, with what little money I had left, I went and bought them a big bag of biscuits, leaving me with only enough money for 2 loaves of bread. And that's what I lived on for 2 weeks. I felt Apocalypse had failed and I had nothing left to give the world. But you cannot discount time. Time changes everything. And over the next few months, more and more people found Apocalypse and started watching it. And over the next few years, almost 60,000 people had seen it, with hundreds of comments. Some were obviously pointing out how low budget it was, but others were singing its praises and asking for a sequel. I'd always planned to make a season 2, but the following year I met Ken and my life massively improved. Through him, I gained my confidence and moved on to bigger and better projects. But I never discount Apocalypse. It was the spark of life in an otherwise dark and gloomy world. For a few months, it gave my life purpose. There of course is a moral to this story, but it's not an original one. Nothing stops the passage of time. No matter what you're going through right now, no matter how bad things are, they won't always be like this. Time moves on, and things change. And without the lows, I don't think we'd appreciate the highs as much. As much as the lows hurt, the highs are exhilarating. And that's how I live now. Because I always have depression, and the depression can take over sometimes, but I know it won't always be like this, because I've been through it so many times before. Time keeps moving, so must we. So now you know the story of how I created Apocalypse. Perhaps when you watch it, you'll have a different perspective, or even a new appreciation for it. The low budget is evident, but I still believe in the story, and if I ever get the chance in life, I would love to make Apocalypse outside of the bunker. But for that, I'll probably need about £200 million, so yeah. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, comment, share. I'm still at the beginning of my YouTube journey, so all of this will help. And if you haven't done already, please subscribe to the channel, and I will see you on the next one. Thanks.